Three, two, one. Recording. Hello, everybody. This is MerlinCast. I got another special guest of the Green Clan Phantom Group alumni, trying to reconnect with some people. This is Ro, aka ShotAnime.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm doing okay. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh no, thank you for actually coming on. I want to try and get to as many people as I can, and I think it used to be. It's never been as difficult with you with the time difference. I feel like you were always like, I don't know, it was late, but we were always with everybody else talking to the wee hours of the morning Eastern Standard Time, and that was normal for you, so it was like okay.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's dead that's the hardest one because he's in England, so it's just like a
Oh, yeah.
5 or 6 hour difference. But he's been trying to always get calls together, so we can blame him for this.
Okay.
For the
Thank you, Dan.
inspiration. No. But I want to talk and whatnot. So I guess first of all, um, a little bit of background. I mean, obviously, we kind of met up in the Green Clan back in the day, talked about anime and various other things. You had a
Mhm.
channel. I kind of wanted to talk a bit about just generally how you've been, and specifically related to the channel, because one of the things I've been doing is, at least to do these podcasts up with people, is I want to try and promote their stuff a little bit. Just kind of share that connection. And I was like, well, I don't know if that's going to work for Shot, so we'll talk about your art in a little bit. But then I did check your channel again just to refresh some old videos, and I saw you posted a video up with one of your kids. Like, okay, well maybe there is some current stuff on there. So talk a bit about your channel and the history of that and what you're doing and etc.
Okay, sure. Oh,
Go.
I started out as Shot American. I had a channel, Shot American, where it's just basically what they call like a J vlogger, somebody like an American expat that was like living in Japan. It was actually my intent to just kind of be what they used to call like a lifer. And it's funny because the word lifer was used as a kind of condescending negative word for people who just spends the rest of their lives in Japan. But now it's just used as like, I think they just took the word and they used it as kind of a badge of honor for lifers nowadays.
Okay.
But that was my intent. I know.
Wow.
That was my intent back then. And then I had moved to the States about 10 years ago, and then I had kids, and so like I tried to keep up with them, the videos, but obviously like I'm not in Japan anymore, so like it's kind of felt weird to like, oh yeah, I'm a J vlogger or whatnot. And that was like all of the content that a lot of the videos I uploaded were around. And then I had created a channel called ShotAnime that was just kind of different, or was supposed to be like a spin-off from the Shot American, and all of that was my friend Victor's idea. And Victor is a J vlogger named Give Me a Flake Man or Give Me a Break Man. He has two channels. I believe Give Me a Flake Man is the one that he uploads the most on recently. And he's like, you like anime, and out of all of my friends, you should just talk about anime and then teach people Japanese at the same time. And I'm like, all right, yeah. So I tried that. And then early on, back then when Crunchyroll was very, very small, they had picked up my channel and were saying, hey, you can have like the commercial, what is it called? The commercial rights to use a lot of our licensed product in your videos. And so I started doing that. So you see it like the long time ago, like 10 years ago, the videos mainly consisted of just me. And then as time went on, like I started to put in clips and everything because like Crunchyroll was giving me like that legal right to do that. I believe like that right I still have for my channel. However, I don't like benefit financially from it anymore. So that one last video that you saw, Yui was really wanting to make a video because she saw that like Mana had some videos and she got kind of jealous. So she wanted to make some. I did bring up maybe making some videos with Mana like a long time ago, but I believe the last video she made was about Cardcaptor Sakura Clear Card. And I think she didn't realize like how much work actually went into them, like actually having to write a script or plan what you're having to say and then be okay with like kind of seeing your face on camera and everything. So there was a lot of there was a lot of hiccups in that video, but I kept trying to explain to her. I was like, no, it's okay. Just keep going, and I'll just edit out whatever it is. But Mana's very like, I don't understand until I see it type of person.
Mm-hmm.
So that was stressful for her until she saw me edit it all out, and she was like, oh, right. But I think like the amount of stress that she put herself through, 'cause she's quite the perfectionist. Like she's not interested in doing specifically the anime reviews. She actually wants to just play Minecraft, and she wants to do it on YouTube, but because she is still 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I know, right? 10 years ago, 10 years old.
There you go.
The channel, yeah, ShotAnime is just as old as Mana is. Like she, you know, I had to explain to her that she couldn't have her own channel legally, and that she actually had to go through me, and like that, you know, she could make videos and give it to me, and then I could upload it on her channel. But like, as for her having her own channel, like legally, she can't have her own Google account or YouTube account to do that. And like it needs to be, yeah, I think the age was like 15 or something.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it. I was kind of I think I was about like 19 or 20 when I actually started the channel. So I thought it was like 13. It's like 13 to watch like certain. I don't know. That's a good. Yeah, it's definitely 10 is too young for sure.
Yeah, but she was very upset about that. So I suggested maybe she do a Twitch instead, and like I don't think she understood that like with a Twitch you kind of need a setup and things. And so I was suggesting, I was like, okay, well, if you want Twitch, like you have to do it through a setup, but also even if you do have the Twitch, like I need to be like there, you know, make sure that no one's saying anything nasty to you.
Does she not want mom there and want it to be completely her thing? Is that what it is, or?
Well, when I told her that, you know, the amount of work that goes into a setup, that she needs to do this and do that and everything, and so she would need to, like, you know, it would take time to set up all of that stuff. Like, I think the thought of doing any of that was just exhausting for her, so she got really upset. Like, I think she just thought that it was just something you click, 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 and yay, you know? So, like, I told her we need, like, screen capturing devices. We need to, like, get you your own things, and she just didn't understand why that was.
Well, I guess if you wanted to, I mean, she could just do the presentation element. She could be the star talent, and I guess if she wanted mom to be the producer, camera person, editor for, I guess if it was like a brief small clip, maybe she'd be okay with that. But I guess that would still require, you know, practice, and like, oh, you know, I don't know, might still be too much for.
Yeah, I told her, I said, hey, once you're old enough and you can figure all of it out, you know, because kids, they're always smarter when it comes to that kind of stuff in comparison to the parents, right? I'm pretty sure there will be a point where I'll just be like, how do I copy and paste? You know, it's going to get to that point. I can feel it.
No.
But, you know, until then, like that's kind of the best option I can give her. And she was very upset about that. Yui is kind of the opposite. Yui's just like, no, I will just do cute things and you will put it online. That's it. So,
oh, okay. All right. Well, all right. Well, I guess I did see, I think a few Crunchyroll teasers and some of them. So, all right. So your channel, ShotAnime, is currently, it is currently technically active. I mean, I was gonna say it was inactive until like a week or two ago. Oh, there's that little one. So I guess with you in your future for anime related content, with or without your kids, is there anything you want to do with that, or is it just kind of like?
So I don't know if the format of how I used to do them is still relatable, to be honest. Like I see that a lot of people, when they're making like anime review videos, like I feel like they do it in the same way that Giguk does it. I don't know how he gets away with having all of that content in his
if I could figure out how certain popular YouTubers can get past all the copyright stuff, I would be so happy, because that, you know, that's the bane of everybody.
Yeah. So but I feel like that's the way that you need to do it. Like you need to just mash a bunch of stuff together and basically do a voiceover. And unfortunately, like I don't think I have that kind of time. Like I think if I'm going to spend 5 hours searching for the videos and putting them together, I'd rather use that 5 hours for my comic, you know? So with the way that the format is now, I don't believe that I can do that. I do know that, you know, a lot of video editing software though has come a long way since back then. It's so much easier to do things now, which when my kids were making videos, they make it so easy that my 6-year-old can figure out how to make like a movie trailer and things,
Wow.
So it's if I had that sort of resource a long time ago, I'm sure it wouldn't have taken me as long. But every time I made like a 1.5 or 3-minute video, it would literally take me 5 hours at least to make
Hey,
that video.
if it makes you feel any better, when I was starting out too, my first couple videos, which were really bad, it's basically just stills, my voiceover. I remember that first video I did. I think I talked about it recently. It was a little Krillin analysis, and I'd never edited anything together. It sounds horrible, and I have no presence, but man, I remember it took me like 4 or 5 hours to make that little 3-minute video, and it was so. Trust me, you come a long way through practice. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, they make it so much easier now, which is great because then we get to see good videos. As for a bunch of YouTube videos, like, I don't know, I feel like I watch a bunch of, I like the funny skits now. So for example, I really like Caleb City, which I know he's not only YouTube based or whatever. I really like just funny, like what the fuck kind of stuff.
Fine.
I feel like that's kind of my whole premise for being on the internet, is that I just find a lot of things that are just funny.
That's a lot of people, honestly. Well, all right. So YouTube's kind of like a little bit in limbo right now. I'm not sure what you're doing with that, but I guess I know a little bit about what you've been doing, and this will lead into the bigger question, the main reason I wanted to hear. But you obviously do a lot of side stuff with your art. So outside of YouTube, what have you been doing? I remember there were things at conventions, you were doing commissions, things like that. So tell me a bit about that. How's that been last
So I
week?
believe that was like 3 years ago, right?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, so 3 years ago, it would be 2017. I had won my first kind of art contest that I had entered. Well, not when I say won, I got like 3rd place, I believe,
Hey,
or
that's
second place,
cool.
place or something.
Cool.
And then, oh wait, no. So in 2015, I won 2nd place for that, and then 2017, I won a 3rd place. And then it was probably my 2nd year doing conventions. I continued doing conventions. A lot of my product was, I believe back in 2017, I had a lot of traditional one-off products that I sold. So, for example, painted fans and hand-painted fans that were like one of a kind. And also I painted lanterns, like paper lanterns.
That's cool.
Like I would paint scenes on the lanterns, like just from popular like Ghibli movies and things like that.
Awesome.
Or even I started to find these lanterns that were like in the shape of Totoro minus the ears, and I would add ears to it and paint the whole thing as a Totoro.
Yeah.
And I really love those. But and the manufacturer for that shape actually stopped making that lantern, and so I contacted the manufacturer, and they said like, we'll only make it for you again if you order 500. And I'm like, I'm not painting 500 lanterns.
Well, no, wait. If you buy 500, then you have the stock to sell them for a while, right? Backlog. Wow.
At that point, I probably sold 50 of that type, and so I'm like, it took like 4 hours to like paint one, and I was just like, when they told me 500, I'm like, I guess I'm not gonna have these anymore.
Oh man, that sucks. That's oh wow.
Yeah. So then I believe from 2018 I started to shift to print. So I started to have more posters and like letterhead size prints and things, and eventually I came out with like 4x6 prints as well. I also had like enamel pins. I had stickers. It became like this big thing.
Nice.
But and it was good for the convention culture back in Washington State, because it turned out to be something that was like, oh, okay, this is something that I could do that is like, it's not making like a ton of money, but it's not like doing badly, So I quite enjoyed that, and it was something that I could do at home while being there with the kids, and still like and it was just something about art too. It's always been something that I feel like I'm not really existing as a person unless I'm like dabbling it or like involved in it in some way. So that was really great. But I think I'd say in the year 2019, right before I moved to Texas, which was almost a year ago now, I realized that I need to work on my comic more than actually just doing conventions. So my friend, believe almost a year ago now, last August, recommended that I set up a Patreon for my comic, and I did that. And at first I wasn't really sure like if it would get anything, because you see a lot of Patreons out there, and sometimes it's not because the content is bad either. There's a lot of great content out there that like have 0 patrons and everything. And so it was very intimidating for me, but I'm like, what do I have to lose? So I just put it up there. And I actually got a few people on there, and I'm like, oh, okay. So this is something I can do instead of just, spending 10 hours on this one illustration that I'm going to use, like, because every time there's a new convention, sometimes you have the same people going to the same convention all the time. So you go to a new convention, you have to like make at least like 5 new things, because if people come back, then they'll be like, hey, I bought this one from you, but I see that you have this new thing, so I'm going to get this new thing from you. And that's just, all of your time just ends up being, okay, well, what can I make new for this convention that's coming up next month? And what else can I make new for the one after that, and things. And I know that there are artists who are really great at it, because they're just workhorses. Like, and I mean that in like a great way. Like they just power through it, and they're amazing. Like one of them is called, his name is Christopher Keiko. I think he does an amazing job at doing that, always creating something new, and he's really good as presence online. I think is really, really good. And he's relatable. And he's also one of those artists that's like really open about like everything that he's doing for his art. So if anybody else is interested in his methods, like he's totally open about all of that. But I think with what happens, was it in 2007? I believe it was in 2017. There was something in 2017 where somebody was like trying to hack into all of my accounts and kind of find out where we live and things. And there was, this whole other thing like on Reddit as well.
Wow. Okay. I didn't know about that actually.
And so, but it had nothing directly to do with my channel or my art or my things, but it was one of those things of like, all right, so I think we're gonna like not go on YouTube as much anymore because people won't really, So, so that happened, and I believe that happened after I talked with you. So I don't think I could have told you about it. So that kind of contributed to like us kind of taking a step back. I think that was also the year that I took down a lot of videos as well, which kind of makes me sad because I don't even remember taking them down, but I must have, because when I look back thinking, oh, let's check that one video that I made before, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, it's not there. And I vaguely remember going through and having to delete some things. And then I noticed that the culture too of the reviewing and YouTube culture had changed because YouTube is trying to shift towards a more becoming another Netflix or something. So, which doesn't seem was that very successful? I know that some of their series were kind of interesting, but
you know what? I'll be honest. You mean YouTube Red? Yeah, I've never.
I have never been interested in having a subscription. So
I like YouTube as just people can go on and make whatever content they want. I mean, I know understanding you want to have enough money to make professional shows, but I've never watched any of them. So
yeah. All right. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. But I think in 2017, I realized like, okay, maybe it's like not the same that it was anymore. But now that I look back on YouTube now, I feel like it's kind of going back to that place again, right?
You think so?
Sorry, I know we were talking about my art, but like
no. Well, I'm remembering. I got the note. We'll get there. But no, that's fine. Natural podcast conversation. What do you mean? Because you really think so? It's going back to that basics kind of.
I think it is. I think more people are starting to. I think people are starting to go on platforms like, because there's TikTok and everything, right? And people will just they've become really smart. Well, they'll just take whatever content they make on TikTok or whatever they make on Facebook, and they'll put it on YouTube as well. just so it's like everywhere. You know, before people are like, no, it exclusively has to be here because that's where you make your money. And everyone is like, no, don't do that. Just put it on Twitch, put it on this and everything. So I think because of that, like it's kind of slowly moving back to the basics. I have noticed a lot of major YouTubers have moved to Facebook, particularly because they make more money off of Facebook. I know that there are gamers that like while you're watching them, because you know Facebook has the whole Venmo thing, you can just make a click if you want to give them $1 or something.
Oh yeah.
So then it becomes this kind of similar to Twitch, where they'll be playing something and if somebody will have $1 and there'll be kind of a social pressure. That sounds terrible, but
I guess it works. Yeah.
Like there'll be a social pressure of like, that person gave $1, I should probably give one too. And so they do that.
Wow, that's devious.
Yeah, I haven't looked into it at all. I mean, that's not something I'm interested in. I'd love to keep my Facebook just kind of a personal, social thing of mine. But
I gotcha. No, I'm mostly keeping it pretty strictly limited to YouTube, I guess. I might use like Facebook or other social media to promote it. But yeah, Zoro did tell me to potentially get a Twitch, so I might do that to do some gaming because I've been doing gaming lately. But
yeah, if you if as long as you stay on schedule and you get a certain amount, you hit like a certain amount of views, which I heard is pretty easy as long as you stay on schedule. Because apparently like Twitch affiliates like just want, or was it Twitch affiliates? Okay, if you are monetized, you become a Twitch affiliate, correct? And so the people who support them, they usually are easily support people that have a regular schedule. So as long as you have it at the same time each time, it's not that hard to get enough supporters. And then you get to reach Twitch affiliate. And I didn't know this, but someone told me that like if you have an Amazon Prime account, they allow you to basically become a paid supporter for free for 2 people that you like on Twitch a month.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool, actually.
Yeah, like if you have an Amazon Prime, like you're basically paying for that anyway. So, and then so like you get to support who you want to, and you're not paying for it because you've already paid for your Amazon Prime, right?
Okay.
And then the people who are making their content or whatever get the money from Amazon.
That's awesome. I didn't know that actually. That's cool. Well, that makes sense because I know you said you like a lot of the little skits and stuff that are kind of reminiscent of the early days of YouTube, and I have been seeing more stuff on TikTok and stuff on YouTube. So you're right, people just uploading it from other sources here just because without like trying to necessarily create a fan base there, and it just kind of builds whatever they're doing. So that is cool. You're right. Well, okay. Interesting little conversation. But getting back to the art, you did mention some recommendations about your comic, your web comic / I guess manga. We could talk about the finale.
Sure.
Half of the Crown, right?
Yeah. So my comic is called Half of the Crown, like you said. I started it in 2018. It's been almost 2 years. And there's almost 10 chapters out. I hope that turns into more. I keep saying this. I hope this turns into a more regular thing for me. And I believe this summer it should be. I feel like every summer, like I'm pumping it out really hard, and the school year starts, and it's something. But this time, I won't be having the conventions, and after having 2 months of the remote schooling for the kids, there is talk that they'll probably do the same for the fall here where we live. And I assume if they're going to do remote learning for the fall, they'll probably do the same for the winter.
Yeah. Probably.
So I have, I guess after I've seen, what my kids can and can't do, I have more confidence that like I could time it better, like just if I have like the mornings after a certain time, and then the rest of the time I'm just like, okay, leave me alone. I'm gonna like art. I think that is possible, but the first 2 months of it, especially the first month, that wasn't possible. But I really believe in my comic, or more like I believe in the supporters that support me.
Well, so, there you go. So because you're saying, people like it, so okay, well they must like something here. So does that give you more like reinforcement or something?
Yeah, I think it's just, this is very common, like we discussed earlier before you started recording, you know, artists just they're very hard on themselves. And I, I'll be honest, like I've always hated everything that I've
Oh,
made up until now. I hope that doesn't discredit me in a certain way. But
no, no.
when I say I hate it, I mean like I've never truly completed something and thought like, wow, this is exactly how I wanted it.
Well, you know, just speaking from my limited experience and stuff I've done, whether it's YouTube or writing or whatever else, you know, I feel like it seems like even people that necessarily put a lot of energy into it, it rarely turns out exactly the way you plan it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think what I've learned is becoming an artist just really means like just having to accept your own limitations and just trusting that, you know, whatever you have to say that people are going to want to hear it, you know?
Hmm.
And so that was one of the things that I really wanted to do with my comic. If you want to know anything about the plot, it's like kind of like a high school Birdie the Mighty meets Sense8 that was on Netflix meets, I don't know, shonen manga.
Well, I wanted to. Okay, all right. Well, all right. Let me ask a couple little questions because I'm thinking of other ones here as we're going. Yes, as far as the plot goes, I haven't read everything yet, but I did check it out more because I knew you were working on it, but I didn't realize you'd gotten as much done until like we started talking and like, oh wow, she's got this whole site, and I'm like, oh, like so I read all the prologues and then chapter one. I think I've got chapter two in front of me. So from what I can remember, I don't want to spoil it too much, I guess, but it seems like uh, I guess the main character can she see like I guess undead sort of?
Yeah, so Asian cultures usually believe that there is like people who are born with like a sixth sense, and at the risk of me sounding like a psycho, I was also one of those people born with a sixth sense, and or I'm just very crazy and don't know it,
No,
right?
well, continue. Continue.
so so I, you know, and the stuff that she is experiencing isn't necessarily like the same stuff that I've experienced, but it's just, you know, so I could just know I could pull it from somewhere, you know. So it starts out just kind of establishing that that's her, I guess, innate power that she was born with or whatever. And so that ends up kind of establishing later on, because a bunch of other crazy stuff starts happening where that kind of ability comes into play, that it's actually more than just being able to see ghosts, but like other things. And so she's kind of brought into a situation where she befriends these, I believe, like 4 other students that kind of have not the same ability, but their own abilities. And then, so it's just, it's kind of a interesting team dynamic where basically she comes in and then they have to figure out, you know, what they're going to do, including her.
Where she fits in now in the class, because she kind of goes
I just
like
spoiled a lot already.
we're keeping it very vague. She kind of goes to a new school, right? That's kind of like the introduction with some of the stuff as sort of the theme. You got to tell people what it is so they're hooked. Like, ooh, yeah, you know, that's fine.
Yes, I noticed that some people in the recent chapters were commenting like, oh, maybe everybody in the school has powers, but no, it's really just these 4 students and her, and it's basically about.
Well,
gosh, all right. So there is. I based a lot of this off of like Judaism and stuff. So
okay.
actually, I know that's kind of strange.
No, it's interesting.
Back when I wasn't being able to draw a lot because I had like a child I was nursing or whatever, and I didn't have a smartphone until basically I had Yui, and so I would just go to half price books and say, you know what, like I need some sort of inspiration or learn something new. Mm-hmm. I don't know crap about Judaism, so I'm just gonna borrow a bunch of books on it and see if like anything gets my brain jogging, and so and everyone can correct me if I'm wrong, but especially Kabbalah, like I focused a lot on Kabbalah. There you go. That's how you pronounce it, I think. And they believe that like the divine, which is God, is basically like this infinite source of light, right? But it's cannot be contained because it's like that powerful. So it's continuously shattering shards of light that falls to the earth and basically become either plants or people, and that as people, we are supposed to basically find out our purpose in life. And sometimes we can't complete it in one lifetime. Sometimes we have to be reincarnated like 2 or 3 more times in order to complete that purpose. But the moment that we find out our purpose in life, like then we can be like reunited with the divine, or something. So to get to know, I guess in a more religious sense, to get to know God is to get to know yourself. Thing.
Gotcha.
And so I thought that part was really interesting. I used kind of the shards of light to explain a lot of the power system. So if you imagine that like a normal person has, a specific amount of light, and I've decided recently to start calling it mana. I was kind of refraining from calling it mana before because my daughter's name is Mana, and I didn't want to weird her out. But then she came in here. Yeah, she came in when I was talking about it over with somebody like on Zoom actually, and then she was like, "I actually don't care, Mom. You should just call it Mana." I was like, "Oh, okay."
I have permission, okay?
Yeah. And so if every specific person has like an amount of mana, that these 4 students are given more mana than the normal person. And so it's actually the same type of mana from the same source. And so since everybody has a lot more mana, like they have like superhuman abilities as kind of a default where they like have increased speed and increased strength, but once they tap into that mana, like at a certain level, it becomes almost kind of similar to like Final Fantasy VII's like Limit Break. They get to their, special move or whatever, or their innate ability. And so because even though it's the same kind of mana that they all have, they can, because they're different people, they are interpreting that mana in different ways. And so therefore each and everybody's power is different.
That's cool.
So I'm really excited to kind of introduce how different and how it comes into play and how they all interpret like their own, powers and everything. I think that part will be very, very fun.
Is it one of those things where the powers kind of are like represented by their personality, essentially? Is that part of it? Okay.
Yeah. So, and then so why do they have powers? Because I believe like it was how it was explained to me, basically, which is not how everyone believes it, but just for the sake of, simplicity in this conversation, they believe that like, in our plane, we are humans and stuff. And the second plane is kind of the emotional / spiritual plane.
Sure.
And then the third, level is like basically a chariot that takes you to the 4th level, which is God. Right. And so in this story, there are people from basically level 0, which are either like demons or like, negative spirits that are trying to kind of climb their way up. And so a lot of these demons or negative spirits, which I've taken a lot of recently, a lot of the demons I've been trying to use a lot of Philippine folklore for that. So think Philippine yokai type of things.
Okay.
I've figured out that if they trade body parts or enough body parts with a human being, they can actually like transcend, go up.
They're trying to cheat the system a little bit.
Exactly. So the whole, I guess responsibility for these kids is that they were given more mana to just kind of help fight that back. So
got some classic stuff going on in there. I like it. No, that's cool. I definitely, when I was reading it, when looking at the artwork, I was thinking, because I remember some of the stuff, you have like a wide variety of interests, so I couldn't really predict it. I'm like, okay, well, I'm thinking, all right, this is, like, my first impression was like, hey, this is going to be cutesy. Is this going to be a romance thing? And like, oh, then it's like, then I saw the horror element. I'm like, okay. And then automatically I heard the school came in. I'm like, yeah, I see this shown it. You're talking about battle systems and stuff. I'm like, okay, so there's a lot going on, actually.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
I just wanted to and then like, I don't know if you've seen Sense8 on Netflix. Like I really thought the whole concept of like, would you make different decisions if you were a different person, or, you know, a different gender or whatever? And basically what I felt like the whole message of Sense8 is not really, you know.
You're still you, basically.
Yeah, there really isn't that much, you know, difference between you and the next person, like when it comes to like, you know, what you can offer, I think, as a person. And so like, I thought that was an interesting concept. So you'll see in the next chapters what I mean by that. So there'll be a little bit of that too. But like, even though that is, the comic right now is still kind of in the establishing phases. So I'm kind of trying to still establish like what this is, and, you know, what are they going to do with this and that. Like the power system that I just explained to you, actually, like nobody knows about it from just reading the comic yet.
Oh, okay.
But it's such a small point in the entire story, so that's why I didn't mind saying it.
Okay.
So even like the kind of Sense8 type of stuff too, like I'm still trying to establish all of that and everything. But I kind of, after I do the establishing stages, like I feel like that's kind of where the real fun is going to start, where everybody's just going to kind of, it's kind of one of those, not to sound sappy, but you find out more about yourself, then you find out you have other powers.
Hey, there's a reason why that stuff is relatable to people. That's not a bad thing. Okay, there's a reason it pops up. That's cool. I'd like your characters to find out more about themselves. I hope you do too.
Yeah. Yeah, for the longest part, or longest time, I was trying to avoid putting any of my own opinions into the characters before Half of the Crown. But I noticed that when I did that all of them were very bland, and I wasn't interested in them. But you know, it kind of gets to that whole like, oh, you should never put your own ego in the characters and things. But in reality, like people that I meet and people that are important to me, they become like part of me, right? You know, like they have a part of my heart. So like, if I think of it that way, like it's kind of helped me kind of get over that whole like, oh, like, you know, you shouldn't put yourself in there, where I'm just thinking, no, this character is going to be like this one friend that I know, and this character is going to be like another friend that I know. And it's just kind of helped me kind of get to know my characters a little bit more and kind of figure out how their dynamic is going to be with each other. And so that's been kind of cool.
Gotcha. No, I mean, I just coming from a writing perspective, and I guess anything creative. I mean, it's kind of, I mean, just speaking theoretically here, but just based upon everybody I know is creative with anything, it's kind of impossible to be creative and not put something of yourself into what you're creating. And the more you put in, the more true it is, and the more interesting it is. Because you're right. If you're trying to create these characters without putting any of your own feelings or experiences into them, you're going to be lifeless and not interesting. You're right. That's probably.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And I can even tell hearing you talk about it, you're so passionate. It's a good sign, at least from the creator's perspective, when they're excited about what they're doing. Like at least you have that. Like that's good to see, right? You've got a lot of passion about it.
Yeah, I do. I keep thinking about like what kind of comic would I have liked when I was little. Not that I wasn't satisfied with the comics that I had growing up, but you know, now that I can kind of look back in hindsight, like what kind of comic would I have needed? And then I think about like what kind of comic do I think like today's youth need? And so I put a lot of thought into that, you know, like I feel like with kids nowadays, and our youth and young adults, like there's not a lot of patience for them. You know what I mean?
Continue. No, I'm give me some insight.
Like for example, they're bombarded with a lot more information than I think we had when we were growing up, right? And then they're expected, after having all that information, to just adapt and then do the whole, I guess, boomer expectation of you go to work and you make it big and that's it. You know?
Yeah.
And that might be true for not everybody, but for a lot of people. Like for my parents, that was definitely true. I'm not saying that they didn't go through hardships, I'm sure, but like, you know, if you go and do the same jobs that they have done in their prime, like you can't make as much money as you did before, you know, doing those things. And so I feel like that there's not a lot of patience from people from that generation with not necessarily my generation, but like the next generation, so my kids' generation.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a huge, the world has changed a lot since then. And I just feel like that the comics that I had, you know, didn't have that, because none of the stuff that's happening now required that the comics back then would need it, if that makes sense.
You kind of make stuff that you think would be more relevant to what kids might need now.
Yeah. And then I know that there's a lot of people, like, for example, Steven Universe, there's a lot of content out there that's really making everyone feel like very inclusive and things. But I'm going to be honest, I feel like I haven't found anything like super inclusive yet for me that makes me feel like, wow, I really want to watch that. You know, in terms from like an American perspective.
Well, I mean, I'll admit, I'm kind of like, I mean, I'm always catching up on older things and rewatching stuff, and like the shows that I'm watching are very limited these days. I'm so behind on so many things. But the only animated show that I liked that's American, that I think is trying to be inclusive, but I don't think it's like overdoing it or it's too cheesy. I love it. I unapologetically love it. She-Ra. You know, I really.
Oh.
No, I don't know if you know this. I was a pretty big He-Man fan growing up. Ironically, didn't watch much She-Ra as a kid, but so I went into this with this fresh perspective. And it's funny, my girlfriend and I, we watch things like Peaky Blinders and other things, and it's just like, and sometimes I'm like, you know, I just want to watch like just some little cartoon, and it's so nice. It's just such a nice. I mean, it goes to dark place, of course, but it does. It does, but
yeah, that's true.
but I like it, and I think in terms of being inclusive, I think that one's pretty good without being, you know, too.
That one also done by DreamWorks?
I think so. Netflix, yep.
Yeah,
DreamWorks, yep.
I really love what DreamWorks is doing. I love almost everything that they're coming out with recently. I love what they're doing with the whole Netflix series. I believe they also did the Dragon Prince, and they was it the Troll something?
Yeah.
Troll Warrior.
Something. I didn't watch them, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and then they also did Kipo recently too. Like I think a lot of those shows, like I don't know, DreamWorks has an ability of like making you feel included without patronizing you about it. Is that what? Yeah, and so I love, like, DreamWorks is my favorite American studio. And I know that, like, what is it? I forget what studio did the Avatar and Korra, but
I wanted to ask you, because I don't know this. Like what I was thinking, just from an artistic style, that was the closest thing I could compare it to, because I loved Avatar, and I'm like, this reminds me a lot of the style. Is it the same studio or some of the same artists, or am I just imagining that? Just inspiration. I don't know.
You know, yeah, because like Dragon Prince, you're right. Like it does kind of seem like, you know, I'm gonna look it up right now.
Okay, now you can compare, because I'm just like, it looks very influenced by Last Airbender art style. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'll look up Korra Legend.
Oh yes, and I didn't finish Legend of Korra, but I finally started to watch a little while ago, and from what I saw, I thought I could have potentially liked it more. I know that was controversial back in the day, but I liked it.
Oh, okay. So they hired a Japanese studio, Piro.
Oh.
But I don't know if that was for the whole thing. Let me check.
Okay. Doing my research for me.
So there's Nickelodeon Animation Studios in Burbank, California, but they did hire like some things that were licensed under Studio Piero. But I know that I saw the credits. I love to just look at the names. I'm bad with names, but I like to just see like where it was animated by looking at the names. And I do recall seeing a lot of Korean names in the production. So I would assume that it's probably Studio Piero, but one of those contracted studios that they have in South Korea, I imagine.
Might have done some of the outer work, but it wasn't. It was officially done by the, I guess, Nickelodeon ones.
Yeah. And then it looks like a bunch of different studios did different chapters for Korra specifically, like Studio Mir, which does the Boondocks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that's actually, I don't want to get too off. We'll dive into like more general stuff, but this is interesting because that's one thing I've noticed that just kind of looking behind the scenes, even with American cartoons, like because I guess Japan has just such a big animation industry. Obviously, I didn't realize how much work is done overseas in the East with obviously stuff like Transformers. Like it blew my mind that all that was just like a
Oh,
combination. Like,
yeah.
like yeah, I really did. I didn't. I mean, I guess it's common knowledge now, but I always assumed that because well, obviously, I guess I never I was so used to thinking of just stuff produced in-house, like obviously a lot of anime series. There's a more distinctive style, obviously, that differentiates from a lot of the Western stuff. But a lot of things that aren't obviously, Japanese in origin are, but they were done to imitate other styles that might be more for sensibilities for 80s Western.
Yeah.
It's just like wow, like that shows a lot to how powerful and varied the industry over there was. So I mean, is that just something you always knew about? That's old news. I don't know. Blew my
I
mind.
think I did, but I started watching. If you remember, like our past conversations with like back then, I believe like I used to brag about like, oh, I watched anime when I was in the Philippines and it was in Tagalog and blah 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 blah.
Sometimes you say stuff like,
Um,
"Oh yeah, I remember growing up and doing this," and haha. Yeah, I don't. I never
yeah.
took it as possible. No,
I remember I
no.
used to brag about that a lot, and so
Yeah.
then when I specifically remember like moving to the States and thinking this had to have been animated in either Japan or South Korea. And I remember like just looking at the credits for each show, and then it would confirm it.
Huh.
Every time I would see the Japanese names or the South Korean names, I was like, "Yep," So I knew it. But I usually checked it out for animations that had a lot of consistency. For me, because like anime in Japan started out being influenced by the 1940s Disney animations, right? And then if you remember those animations, all of the characters were always consistent, drawn very consistently. Like they might as well have been 3D models that you draw over, because in every, what is it? Not panel, but every frame.
Frame.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
every frame, they were always, you could tell, like just from a glimpse, like, oh, that's that character, right? As whereas like I don't know, the X-Men cartoon, I know that some of it was
Oh.
animated
Oh
in
wait.
Japan, but
Wait.
sometimes
Wait.
like Jubilee and Gambit would have the same face, right? Like
Wait. No. No. Wait. You're talking about the '90s one, right? Because
yeah,
all right. Well, all right. Okay. All right, man. We're getting off the rails here.
yeah.
I have other follow-up questions, but this is fascinating. Okay. I
Yeah.
want your opinion. Okay. Obviously,
So
for content at least and nostalgia, '90s X-Men's great. But first of all, I know that it's infamous for, I guess, getting outsourced in that last season looking bad. Uh,
yeah,
so is that? But that was that like a Filipino company? I think.
it might have been, huh? So for me though, like what I usually went to check if an animated series was drawn out, like out of America, when the art was very consistent.
Oh, when it was consistent, because I'm wondering if they did a lot more work for X-Men. I mean, it was pretty well animated, but I know they could be choppy, right? They could be
Yeah,
sometimes.
like because I think Disney had a studio in Australia, and they did like the Rescuers Down Under,
Mhm.
and I believe, gosh, they did that movie, and then they also did Aladdin, and they did Ariel, and their art was great, but it wasn't consistent. If you actually go back and like look at it, like
Oh,
sometimes there were some frames that was like, "Ooh, what happened there?"
so you're one of those people that you're gonna go back and look at the classic, beautifully animated Disney Renaissance movies and look at one frame and like, oh, that frame looks terrible.
Yeah, and normally the movies that had like the inconsistent frame with for Disney 2D animated stuff was done in that Australian studio, right?
Really?
Yeah, an Australian Disney studio. But here's the thing, like I
Mhm.
feel like that with 2D animation, especially cell style animation, like for some reason I don't know what happened. It's probably time constraint. The level of consistency started to fall. And I think for me, the animated characters in the 90s were always very consistent, right? Um,
Mhm.
So for anime, not American.
Oh, okay. I'm just, see,
Yeah.
I just
So,
rewatched something, so I'm like, I don't know how consistent that is.
yeah, and it might be just kind of an OCD thing for me, of just like it has to look like this, or whatever. And not that I didn't enjoy some American animations. Like I really loved Mighty Max and things.
Classic, yeah.
And then I believe there was another one that's called Invasion America, which is only like 13 episodes. I really like that one too. Nobody watched that one, but
I'll be honest, I don't know what that is, so that's fine. Wait, all right, Shot.
I was so excited about it when Invasion America came out, because I was just like, sweet. So it's like, it's done in the style of like Batman, the animated series, and but it was just, it was really cool looking and everything, but it wasn't supposed to be for like little kids. It was targeting, teenage and adults and stuff. And I remember, I think I was like 10 or 11 at a time, and I was like, finally it's happening with our anime here, and then nobody watched it, and I think they just stopped after that, and I was like, oh man.
All right. Now I can tell what this is gonna devolve into now. All right, random question. Have you ever seen Cyber9? Heard of it?
No, I actually haven't heard of it.
Okay, yeah, that was like an obscure like 90s cartoon that was like based on a comic. I think it's like a Brazilian comic or something.
Oh wow.
It was interesting, just like some like femme fatale Batman-esque character fighting mutant Nazis or whatever. Didn't go anywhere, but I was just wondering if you heard of it. But okay, we're gonna get back. Eventually, we're just gonna talk about animation because all right, that's cool. But all right, this is all right. I do have a question now about this because I want you to confirm something for me because this is fascinating.
Okay.
You really like the consistency of animation, typically from Japan, whereas a lot of American cartoons were not so consistent. This is true, and I think that generally speaking, the admiration and the love of Japanese animation and Korean animation is just that there is just a lot of variety and a lot of good quality overall that people didn't know about until a couple decades ago. But I feel like on the other end of the spectrum, there still is a lot of that, making fun of, like, obviously, like, kind of cheating and animation errors that we see all the time that people grapple on. Like, how legitimately do you think that is? And of course, I can't have a podcast without mentioning Dragon Ball. No, seriously, you know, I know you love the show, you appreciate it. Okay, in your opinion, your expertise, having watched it as an artist, no, whatever, your experience as a viewer, do you think that the animation in, say, like, I don't know, the Dragon Ball Z anime, was it good because they were consistent? Like Goku might be consistent, but frame to frame, but some people might say that's lazy if he's just standing there, and they might have another frame and another scene where he does the same model. Like, is that, some people might say that's lazy if it's not I don't know. How do you judge something like that?
So that's done by Toei, right?
Correct.
Toei is pretty notorious for having, like, because they know that they have a lot of they have series that they can make it look like shit and people will still watch it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Example is One Piece, right?
Oh man. See, I don't think it's that bad.
Piece, right? But man. It's just, like Oda has gotten to a level with his art that it's just absolutely mind-blowing, amazing and stuff. Recently with the Wano Kuni arc, like they've really stepped up with the animation and things. But I believe there was like 3 or 4 years where it was just like you had to figure out what was happening because you could only see like moving faces,
Really?
Yeah, when people would be talking, it would be like this. And then if someone's like flying through the air, it would only be like their face. Like Toei was doing that for a long time with One Piece. But from what and it's weird because Toei seems to have like 2 different departments. One is completely devoted to magical girl stuff. Sailor Moon and stuff, yeah. And then the other one is just kind of the non-magical girl things. So I'm serious. Magical girl and everything else. Yeah, and then so there's like different directors like, in charge of that. And so originally they had like the One Piece director doing the Sailor Moon Crystal, which is why the first 2 seasons are like, oh, what the fuck happened there, right? It was done by the person who's used to doing One Piece, right? So even though all of the material is there and they didn't do a terrible job, it just wasn't as consistent as you would see in their Pretty Cure stuff. Pretty Cure is a huge thing in Japan. It's not really that big here in the States, but Pretty Cure is basically the equivalent to like a little girl Sentai.
Oh, okay.
In Japan, because you know every Sentai is like there's a new one every year and everybody watches it. There's a new Ultraman and stuff, and so in Japan they have something called for the animated ones it's Pretty Cure, and there's a new Pretty Cure every year, and they sell it to little girls and stuff. And they recently Toei started a live action magical girl series, usually dealing with around like 10 to 11-year-old girls, and they call it Miracle Tunes. And I found out about Miracle Tunes. They're basically singing idols that, like, you know, if they sing a song and do a little dance and then their attack comes out.
That's cool.
Yeah, and so they started to do that recently, I think like 2 or 3 years ago. And I found out about that through Yui, because Yui found that online and she just went crazy over it. Like she bought the wands and everything. So Toei puts a lot of their consistency and I think a lot of their focus, because that's where they make, I wouldn't say the bulk of their money, but like, I think that's what I feel like that they probably fund that really well, you know, the magical girl part. And then they have Dragon Ball and One Piece and, you know, whatever else that they make. And what I've noticed with the, I guess, shonen series that they produce is that if the fight scene or the scene is not like a crucial scene in the whole thing, like if the directors don't actually believe that this scene is the one that everyone's going to be talking about, they give it to all the rookie animators.
Oh, wow.
And then when there are scenes that actually, you know, are what they consider really, you know, important scenes, then they bring out all the veteran animators, which is why if you're watching One Piece, you'll go through like 10 episodes of just like floating faces, you know, for the entire episode. And then the next episode, like it's amazing, you know, quality. And you know, Toei doesn't really put in a lot of frames in their shonen anime series, I feel like. And you might not need those frames had you animated like you did in the 90s or 80s. But since the animation style is different now, like I don't think those skills of learning to like make something fluid with less frames, that I don't think that skill carried over to the new animators nowadays. Like, unless you are thinking about like the veteran animators, you know what I mean?
Gotcha.
So yeah, so I think it just got to a point where like, I don't know what is it, but whatever their staff is, like maybe it's just the time, it's, you know, they're under a time crunch, but then it's like weird because it's like, but then Pretty Cure has consistent, you know, animation throughout the entire thing. And then also if you look at like the very first few Pretty Cures, they're very strange because like their fights were pretty, like some of them were very violent. And so I was just thinking like, whoa, little girls watch this, like, oh my God.
They're eating it up. Hey, Sailor Moon was pretty violent back in the day. They could get
no, but I'm like, okay. I mean, like violent. Like it just looks like if you see all the Pretty Cure girls like up against one enemy, it just they look like they're a gang, like just doing the beatdown on one person.
I want to watch this show now. It sounds good.
Like in Final Fantasy VII remake, where you know Tifa, Barret, and Cloud, like they're all overpowered and they're all just fighting one enemy, and it just looks like a gang beatdown. Like that's what Pretty Cure looked like.
Well, all right. So I guess as an answer to your question, it sounds more like it's instead of being a general like stereotype about that, it's more of a studio and in-house issue per series, really.
Yeah, it's. I think it's disappointing that Toei is putting more into their moneymaker, which is Pretty Cure and Miracle Tunes. But you know,
though, I guess it's better. It sounds like it's better to put money into something you know people like. It just sounds like with the other stuff is like, well, you're right. There's some of their shows. We'll just animate certain scenes to keep people hooked, but the rest of it doesn't matter because somebody just a floating head talking for a dialogue. It doesn't matter. Oh,
no, but I'm serious. Like you'll be watching 10 minutes. It's like the same frame of floating head, and you're like, oh my God. Like,
that's
it was pretty bad. And also you have to remember with Sentai and Pretty Cure, because it's a new one every year, the toys that they sell are only limited to being sold that year. That's why they make a lot of money, is because collectors and everything will just be like, oh my God, they're only making a certain amount of this toy, we gotta buy it now. And and then everybody else that actually have kids that watch the show.
Have you fallen into the trap? You got to get her some toys. Have you already?
I mean, we did. We got her like a Magical Tunes or Miracle Tunes wand.
Oh yeah,
and
it's the wand.
Yeah, like, so it's just it's terrible, because we got it after the first season, and she wanted the wands from the first season, and it was over, and they already started the second season, which is a completely new cast and new wands and a new whatever. And so, but she just wanted the first season's wand, so we had to like go to a Don Quixote in Japan, I think last February, to find it, and I believe it was like $40. But back then it was, while it was being aired, it was like 19. And then like they have these little gems that you're supposed to put in, and each gem actually plays a different like tune.
Oh.
And so you have to pay for these gems. But then if you find them online right now, like I believe to buy all of the gems that are available and the wands, it's like over $200.
Whew, it's collector's
just
item
because
now.
they're not being made anymore. But so if you think that's why they make money, because they know that like all of their toys are going to sell out. They know that collectors are really crazy about that in Japan, and so Japan really does that whole and a lot of people will imply that Nintendo does the same thing. I can't confirm if they do that or not, but they'll only have like a certain amount, because they know that if there's a certain amount that people will flock to buy it, and therefore they'll never have any overstock, and they'll always like, if they're shooting to make this amount of money, they'll always have that amount of money if they keep it limited.
Well, I can definitely believe that. I remember some of those little compact old school system things I wanted to get, and I didn't snag them, and now they're like, oh yeah, they're pricey now on Amazon or whatever. So I could believe that, but it's a good, I mean, I don't know. I wonder if that's a good business model or not, because I guess you're more likely to sell what you have, but then if you have people that want to buy it later, you can't get it from them.
I think so my friend who has worked for Google before, and he's also worked for Google in both like 2 Asian countries, I think, and the States. He has said that Japan has still not thought of brands globally yet. They still make things just kind of for their own country. And I think, they probably are starting to transition to like, but how can we make this a global thing now? South Korea has just right off the bat been like, okay, we're going to market everything we make globally right away, because, we only have so much people in South Korea, so we might as well like appeal to everywhere else. And they've been very successful about that since they've started to try. And I think Japan's still in this kind of like, oh, well, no one's going to be interested in this. So we're just going to make it for us.
That seems like kind of outdated, but yeah, okay.
Yeah. So one example is that, so K-pop, I don't know if you're familiar with it. I'm not a huge K-pop fan, but like, I think it's fascinating when I like read articles about like K-pop stars. There is a lot of Korean produced K-pop groups in different Asian countries, like where it's not being advertised as like so for example, in Japan they're starting to do K-pop produced Japanese groups, and then the Philippines are doing K-pop produced Philippine groups. And so it's kind of advertised as the pseudo K-pop, and then people who are really into Korean culture will flock to those idol groups and everything. And Japan is Japan has done that with like AKB48, and Philippines it's Manila 48 or something. So it's MNL and then 48. And then they have the same thing in like Thailand. It's like a different letters and then the number 48 or 84 or whatever the heck they're doing now.
Well, this is news to me. I mean, are you saying that K-pop stars don't tour outside of Korea then? Because there'll be these
No,
other...
they do. So they do, but they've also realized that, like, hey, let's localize this, is what I'm
Okay.
saying.
Okay.
And so a lot of Japanese companies aren't really good at localizing. Like, I think Nintendo is like starting to be really good at it, obviously, because they have like the NOE and the NOA and everything.
Mhm.
But typically, like when you come up with things like, for example, anime, they make it for the Japanese market, and they haven't really thought about like, but how would this be globally and everything. So they're starting to realize that, especially with Ghibli movies and, you know, Your Name and Weathering You, that like, oh, people are interested in seeing this. And so I think they're starting to, but South Korea is a lot more ahead on that. Like, they've already been cashing in on that. Because I believe like at least 1/4 of their GDP comes from just Korean entertainment.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
so, and then
wow.
Japan relies more on tourism than it does their entertainment industry.
Interesting.
So,
Huh. No, that surprised me. You know, because I guess something like anime is still. See, I just feel like over here it's more mainstream than it's ever been. But yet,
yeah.
it's still considered niche from a Japanese market. They're not making enough money, but now they're just starting to realize, oh, people like it more over here. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's hard to
We
believe.
do. I mean, they really need to stop animating those really pedophile series.
Well, you know, actually, all right. You know what? I guess elephant in the room. I don't even think about it. You know, I don't, because that's not what I'm into. But you know, I watch anime. I watch a variety of shows. But yes, the whole. I think that for a long time, and to some extent still, that whole element of animation is kind of the first thing people think about with anime, and that might still make the market kind of weird over here. So
yeah,
that's true. That's true.
Because it's outlawed in Japan. So I don't
It
understand
is?
how like it is, but it's not something they enforce as much as they do here.
Oh.
So for example, the Ronin Kenshin guy, he's probably only in jail for a couple of weeks, and then he just like he's out already. He's living his whatever.
Yeah,
So,
I know that's like a cultural, I guess, perspective on that whole thing. It's a bit different, and that's true. And I know, obviously, I guess if things are a little light over there, and then that comes through in the culture. And there's a lot of shows that are not blatantly like that still have some of those elements that people can poke fun of or be weirded out by. So I don't know. I think that might be harder to shake off.
Yeah,
completely.
I think even though it's uncomfortable, I'm gonna say that the ones that are poking fun at the pedophiles in the same way that, like, say, Family Guy makes fun of that old guy that's like, "Hey, you want to come in for cookies?" You know, like
I don't really like Family Guy that much these days, anyway. But yeah.
Just, like, you know, if you're making fun of the pedophile person, I'm gonna say that's, you know, that's not making the victims the butt of the joke. That's the, you know, making fun of the pedophiles. And stuff.
Man,
so that's fine.
All right.
So
well, now you're gonna make me go there, because now I'm curious, because I admit I try to stay out of these things, but they are relevant to what we watch.
Yeah.
Human talk. That is okay. I'll give you a general example. Okay. So, Master Roshi. No, I'm serious. Because it came up recently. I mean, like a little while ago, people were like, there was a little debate I heard briefly. It was like, Master Roshi is problematic, but he is the perfect example of, they constantly did acknowledge that his behavior was bad, and so he's okay, and people don't typically hate Master Roshi. And I've heard I guess in Super he got recently a comeuppance for that, like somebody, I don't know. I don't. I don't know. I don't even know what my question is. Like, how does a character like that iconic, like, we kind of accept him as being the pervy old man character, you know, but I don't know. People don't. Do we completely like shut out Master Roshi? Like, how it's a tough, because people generally seem to think he's fine because he's.
So I think it's
I don't know.
Okay, so let me bring up Family Guy one more time. I know you don't watch it or whatever, but
No.
there is like an old pedophile man character.
I remember him. Oh,
And,
hey there, yeah, with the
yeah. Okay, so you know,
I remember it. It's been a long
the
time.
writers put him in because they're making fun of something that they know exists out there, but it's, you know, it's kind of a dark humor thing, right?
Yeah.
And I think dark humor does not exist in Japanese culture.
Okay.
At all. Like every time I made any sort of dark humor joke, people would just be like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" If I said it. So, for example, I would be like walking in. It was a very windy day out in Japan, and I was like with my sister-in-law, Japanese, and this guy, you know, just had a haircut, and we were right behind him, and the wind was like flowing. And one of his like hair slivers got into my eye, and I was like, right?
Oh.
And then something like, oh, are you okay? And as soon as like I crossed the road, I was like, yeah. And then tomorrow I find out I have AIDS, right? And you know, Shinobi, he was used to it, so he chuckled for a bit. But like his sister just looked at me like, but why would you say that?
Okay, so that's something that doesn't really translate.
Dark humor does not exist in the same way that American dark humor is. And so that's like a cultural thing. So Master Roshi is kind of like the dark humor of like, yep, there's one in every circle, perfect man, you know, but it's not it's done in the way of like, it's not condoning it at all, but it's just making fun of like, oh, that's there, you know?
Okay.
So if you think about it, it's kind of like, but there is that culture too in Japan that like that a lot of people will have predatory thoughts, but they won't like act on them.
So that's an accepted thing to have, to just be a group of like, we acknowledge we have them, and so but we don't act on them. So that's good.
For some people, I think like that's just kind of, you know, that's what sucks about it. But like, I mean, it sucks that it's thought of that way, which is why when you see a lot of like fan service things, it's usually done from the angle of like, ooh, we're not supposed to do this, but we're doing it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you know, for example, falling into someone's crotch by accident and reaching right? You know?
No,
like,
and they're all yeah.
Always in that, but it's kind of in that whole thing of like, oh yeah, people are thinking it and stuff, but it's not really happening, so it's okay, you know?
You know, I guess, oh man, all right. Well, I guess I guess it depends on the show, obviously, like certain context, like a lot of those romance shows, it's like, okay, whatever, they're teenagers, it's awkward anyway. But then there's, I think the uncomfortable thing is just like in shows that aren't, you know, they're pretty mainstream, where you've got characters who are overly sexualized and they're underage, and you know, it just happens. It's in these shows, and they're and I guess it's a draw that is
so it's this thing where I don't know. Okay, so I think there are places where it can get too far, right?
Sure.
Where it's like, for example, where it can like where it says like, oh, older people that are into younger people are totally okay, right? We see. I mean, that exists in our culture too, with like Twilight, you know, or whatever.
Yeah. That's the whole thing.
As long as it's a god and a young girl, like, doesn't matter.
He's immortal, and as long as he still looks like he's like 17, it doesn't matter that he's like 150. Yeah, that's a whole problem. Yeah.
There's still like, I mean, that exists in both cultures,
definitely.
But I think, in a way, because Americans have this whole like, oh, nobody is sexual until they're 18, which is not true.
True.
Right.
True.
And Japan has a very like, oh, we know that you're sexual, so we're gonna make sexually age-appropriate jokes where someone's staring at panty lines, they're not actually touching it. You know? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It sounds. There's not consent is not really a thing that's. It's actually a recent topic in Japan. I'd say about 2 months ago. Recent.
Well, every society moves with different things at
their own pace. And Japan's kind of in this weird thing where they're getting progressive super fast in such a short amount of time, but they'll still, you know, they're going to take some time. It's still an older society, right? And what I mean by that is that there's this woman who got sexually assaulted by like a superior for the news, for a news organization, because she was a reporter,
Mm-hmm.
and she was in a battle for 10 years. And here's the thing, if you sue somebody, you'll never get that money back, because the amount of money that you use in Japan to sue someone is never going to amount the money that you'll be given for damages. So she
Wow.
sued this guy who sexually assaulted her. And she got, I think, $30,000 from it, but she's been in court for this thing for 10 years.
So they can't just have a settlement for like a higher amount to go after?
No, and she definitely paid more than 30K into the, throughout the 10 years. But for her, it was like, no, I'm going to stick to my guns and make sure that you don't do this to anybody else,
Good. Yeah,
But it
that's
took
awesome.
her 10 years, and it's the first of its kind.
That's the first of its kind?
Yeah, to be like as big as it is in the news right now, to actually, when it's talking about consent, like it's the first of its kind. Really, as big as it is.
That just, that's, I'm glad, in a way, I'm kind of glad you're telling me that, because it's like, I know that's something that, obviously, sometimes I talk about it with my girlfriend. Sometimes like some things we don't understand, like why is that way over there? Because, and I always knew that there were elements that I've heard about just in terms of, like gender relations and sexism, and I'm like, wow, but it's kind of
it's this weird thing where like the idea of sex is not as stigmatized as it is here in the States. I mean, with like the same age groups, so it's like teenagers and adults, right? Like there's not as much shame, I think, for having casual sex in Japan.
Well, it sounds to me like you're right. I think generally there is kind of almost this fear of like talking about that stuff for younger people here, even though it is something that comes up, which is normal. But it's almost like Japan's on the other end of the spectrum. We're like, okay, but like maybe a little too okay sometimes.
It's weird that that's like they don't have that stigma about talking about it, about acknowledging it, but at the same time they don't have that conversation about consent.
Yeah, consent is a big you said, I think you mentioned that in one of the conversations, that there isn't as much of communication about puberty and things that it's like people just find out for themselves that without any real guidance. I'm like, wow, that's weird. That's
not, at the risk of embarrassing my husband, he had to ask me like what a period was for, like not too long ago.
Well, that shows just how different cultures are, because it's like we were talking about before the podcast. I mean, in Japan, that's a big deal. That
the boys only learn about themselves, and the girls only learn about themselves in Japan.
But
they don't learn about the other.
But like I want to say it's a good thing, and not to sound too judgy. It's illuminating, because obviously over here, there's this consensus that a lot of times people want to say, oh yeah, we've got no problems with racism, race issues, or class issues, and look where we are. We still got a long way to go. We're not as far along as things. So I'm just saying everybody's got. It's a process, I guess.
We're all at different points of the game.
And the sad thing is, we're probably not that much further ahead than we think we are.
No, we're not.
We're not. But it sounds like it. But like, think about it. Like 30 years ago, 40 years ago, it's like, women. Where I like, man.
Yeah, we're not over here. I have a funny story.
Sure, please. Something funny.
Okay, so there's a lot of people who will raise kids that, especially little boys, and you can tell if they come from kind of a very chauvinistic family, because they'll, at this age, at around 10 years old, some of the boys will come in and they'll show that, right? Oh no, you can't play Foursquare with us today because you're just a girl, or you can't play wall ball with us because like you're not as good. And she'll just be like, how do you know? You didn't even see me play yet. And then they'll just be like, but you're a girl. Like, and she's had some comments from some boys, it doesn't matter if you can or not, you're just gonna make sandwiches anyway. Like,
ooh.
So that's been said to her.
Ooh.
I think last school year and this school year. And so she's come home with a lot of questions like, how do I deal with this? And what is this? Why are they saying that kind of stuff? So I had to explain to her what like sexism was. And so it just, in her mind, it was like, oh, the boys think that boys come first, right? And that thing. So think about that line, right?
Mhm.
And so doing remote learning, they were doing this thing where it's like, oh, everyone think about a joke to talk about during the next like Zoom meeting, you know, with your class. And I told her to, okay, I also have to explain that it's possible that Mona is on the spectrum, that she
Okay.
might have Asperger's or not. So she
Okay.
doesn't quite like catch on to some certain things or not. She's currently still being evaluated, but it's something that like we had thought about for a while. And so she, you know, was looking online, and I told her specifically, type in clean jokes, because she didn't understand what dirty jokes were. And so she typed in clean jokes, and one time she just put funny jokes. And then so she got some dirty jokes in there, but she didn't understand that they were dirty. And she would come to us with like a list of jokes that she wanted to say. And I was like, well, you can't say this one, this one, this one, and this one, but you can say this other one. And she ended up going with this very clean joke. And it was a hit in, you know, in her Zoom meeting or whatever. But she still really thought that one of the dirty jokes was very funny without realizing that it was dirty. And we actually don't remember what that joke exactly was, but the punchline was, because men come first. And she was like talking to one of her friends, I think.
Oh, I just hit me. Oh, no.
And she was talking to one of her friends who wasn't so innocent as she. And so he was very aware of those kind of jokes. And she was telling the joke to him, I think through FaceTime while they were playing Minecraft together. Because kids nowadays have figured out, let's FaceTime and then let's play Minecraft. And then that's their way of like, you know, gaming together. And so she was like telling him while they were playing Minecraft, like these jokes. And then we didn't hear the joke, but we heard the punchline of like, because, you know, men come first. And the reason why she said it, and she thought it was funny, because she thought it was a sexism joke.
Well, she's half right. Oh, wow.
But the boy immediately realized what she meant, and he was like, and we ran into the room. We were like, Mona! You know,
No.
like,
Whoops.
And I had to explain to her that like that's a dirty joke, and she's like, but why?
But why is it a dirty joke?
Sexism, right? Because men think they're gonna be first, right? And I'm like, no, not quite. I mean, yes, but not quite.
Oh, no. You're not quite there. You're not quite at that point, that conversation. Well, I don't know. Is that good or bad? You had to talk about sexism before sex. I don't know if that's. I don't know.
I knew, you know, she's my first kid, and so, you know, whatever age that she's in, it's my first time dealing with that age, and, you know, whatever.
There you go. Where does it go?
But I've always told myself that if she's old enough to ask, then she's old enough to learn the answer. So
I like that. She's thinking about it. That's wow. I like that, actually. That's good.
Yeah, and she's been pretty forthright about any questions that she's had about anything. So I just, you know, I try to just explain it to her. Yui is very much like, I will observe people to get the answer myself. So she's a little.
I like that too. Like, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I'll figure it out.
Yeah, she does a lot of observing people, and she can read the room quite well. So we're a little worried about that. We're making sure she uses that towards good and not evil. But yeah, Mana is very much just an innocent soul, and will always probably be. So not a bad thing.
I hope so.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, all right. I'm enjoying this podcast. It's gone off. Now, do you remember I have a couple minor sections. We're not quite done. We're talking about the comic yet. I had a couple for you. I'll just tell them to you. Okay. Well, you talked a little bit about your inspiration. Are there any like a mangaka or a comic book authors, artists, or any other stories and other media that influence you as an artist or a writer or whatever?
So I did, but I really loved Masakazu Katsura's art growing up when I was little. Mm-hmm. Even though all of his stuff was ecchi, like it didn't even matter to me. Like I loved the way his lines looked and how he made just people's faces and hair and clothes looked. It was really great. And then I also loved, prior to his current work, Kentaro Yabuki, when he was writing and drawing his own stuff. He did Black Cat, and before that he did Yamata Gunsoki, but he's more well known for specifically because Black Cat anime got all fucked up. It was really shitty. The comic was really great, but he's more famous now as the artist for To Love Ru.
Oh, okay. I know that one. All right.
Yeah, and then so we read it as To Love Ru, but it's actually supposed to be trouble, but in the Japanese pronunciation, so Toraburu.
I'm not even going to attempt.
Yeah. So when we see it, it's like we say To Love Ru, but it's actually just supposed to be trouble. I don't know why they did it.
I like the sound of the title.
Yeah. So, but his art on there, obviously he went like another route that made him more money, and more power to him. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
But I really loved his work in Black Cat, and also I think I really still do like Obata. I'm really bad with names. I forgot his first name, but he's the artist that did like Death Note and Hikaru no Go and Bakuman. So I like those. I mean, he's kind of a more recent one and stuff, but I really did like Hikaru no Go for the longest time, even though like
I remember
even
that.
before I even spoke or could read any Japanese, like I still bought them all just because like I was just so amazed at the art that like, okay, there's these two people that are sitting down playing this board game, but it was so much movement that you made just with two people playing a board game that I was just so impressed that they could make a board game, even though I have no idea what the fuck was going on at the time that I bought those as a kid. Like, it still made it look very exciting. And so it was just something that I really studied a lot. I don't know if that shows, but
I think a little, yeah.
I don't know
sure.
if I don't know if there's anything that,
I could definitely tell you're not trying to emulate him too directly, but like in terms of like, I guess the specifics, but
yeah, I was told back when I did a lot of my black and white traditional stuff that I looked like that I was trying to copy the way that Obata did his hair and stuff, but I didn't see it that way. Yeah, but it's just, it's shiny. I think it's, if you see that, almost all mangaka do that with the black hair. They just make it like, shines in as many places as you can, because why not?
Sure, yeah.
So I was just trying to do that. But I think the biggest one that probably started it all was probably what forever will be Dragon Ball.
Yay!
8 years old, I used to go and buy the comics and stuff, and the consistency was just very comforting to me. I don't know why, but even now.
Oh, well, you know what? All right. Well, I'm very happy to hear that, and this is a redundant question, but maybe you'll settle a little debate for me then. Would you say you think Toriyama is a good artist then?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I just wanted to get your opinion on that.
I know that a lot of people wouldn't think so, but yes.
Okay, I think so. That's cool.
This is why.
Whoa!
Out here.
Bringing the collection, nice. Sweet.
Go. So this one, I lost the cover for this because I was little.
Oh shit.
But
yes.
Like this is from the movies, and this is like right after this movie came out, so that's how.
Oh my gosh, is that Tree of Might or something? What is that? I can't. Which one is that?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh my goodness, and that's like color. Oh my goodness, that is so cool.
Yeah, it's just basically stills from the movie. I mean.
Wow.
And if you look at a lot of the episodes, like the Dragon Ball Z episodes, the art was already so good in the comic that I feel like they just traced whatever they did from the comic and then the frames and everything. But I mean, I don't know how anyone can look at this and say that it's not good. I think this is the last volume for Dragon Ball. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just, I'll be honest, it wasn't until I went back and actually started reading. Yeah, just reading the manga, and I'm like just admiring the detail of his line work, and just I think I I just really do think that he's a very good artist. I mean, you could say what you want to about his plot if you want, but I don't know. I don't know. The manga, I think the art was pretty great myself. But yeah, I remember I saw an interesting video about just framing and about how he frames panels, and I guess just comic book language, how well it worked. I'm like, yeah, I didn't even think about that. But just how you divert your eye to the action. I guess that's something that all comic book artists have to do. So I,
Yeah, I feel like with a lot of the shonen series now, like it probably all started here with this, right? I mean, One Piece started with if the person really liking Dragon Ball, so did Naruto, so did Bleach, all of them. Like all of them still will refer to Dragon Ball because I think Dragon Ball had started that kind of style of, oh, look, this is happening with these lines and, this kind of movement. And I mean, as a kid, when I watched these, when I looked at these, I was like, wow, they're such good fighters. But then like once you get older, you lose a little bit of that because you're like, that's a little, like it's just animate the same, whatever. And like I think like the general public's knowledge of martial arts and things had gotten a little bit better, like even just basic knowledge. And so a lot of this doesn't look impressive, I think, nowadays. But still, the art though, and the amount, like you can almost hear that pling, you know what I mean? Like it's still there. It's still got it. So I don't know. I'm not gonna knock it.
All right, well, hey, that's really awesome to hear because I know you're a big fan, but that's really cool. Just well, yeah. I mean, I remember some. You know how it is. It sounds like it's almost so tired to constantly express my love for it, but I think it's great on many levels. So that's good to hear.
Yeah.
But getting back once again to yours, I'm still trying to promote it. You mentioned, okay, you started this back in 2018, and I know that you had a couple months. All right, when you're going through your process, okay, I'm gonna ask about your process. Like when you obviously you came up with a story idea, like do you kind of script it? Do you have certain images you kind of sketch, and then like how exactly does the process unfold to make
if
it?
I know that I'm introducing a character that's coming on that hasn't been introduced yet, I will have to sketch the character out a few times to just really see if that's exactly how I want him to look, or her to look. And so I'll do that. And then it's something that I can't really explain it, but if something is not right about it, I'll just start all over again.
Okay.
And then until like I do something and I'm like, oh, okay, no, that's it. Like I got it. That's fine. That skill, I don't think I would have had until I started doing character designs for clients and things, like people who were asking for commissions. A lot of people would want OCs, and they would like be very particular about how they want the OC. And like I remember like working really closely with like friends or clients and we'd like tweak it until we got it perfect. And I remember feeling at the end like, oh, this is what they mean, and it would just click. And so for my own characters, like I kind of tried to use the same skill of like just sketching it out until something clicks, and then when it does, then I go ahead and put them in. I do start with a script first. Okay. And I usually try to have like especially writers kind of look over it. I have before, hopefully I don't have as bad of a habit of it now, but before, a long time ago, I'd say in 2017 18, when I was writing the scripts for the first time, I had a habit of being too on the nose about things and not really leaving like a sense of mystery. I think I had a problem of like not really like having patience to introduce things little by little. Like I just put it all, out there. If you recall that I had made that comic Tonic, where like there was this big ass, really crazy fight like right off the bat and everything, and it was just like, I think that was a mistake because it was before anything or anybody could get established. And so you're just thinking like, okay, this is fight, but why?
Why?
So I learned a lot from that. So I always just script it out first. I'm having admittedly some struggle with some of the fight scenes because I am not a martial artist, and a lot of my friends are martial artists, but I've learned that just because you do martial art doesn't mean that you can script a fight scene. So I've actually, yeah.
Yeah.
So I have actually had to just basically realize that like I need to up my fluency. Like I know it looks cool, but like as in like creating something, you know. And then also I have been very upfront about like if I'm kind of lifting like a certain movement from a certain source, like I'll be upfront about like, okay, well, I really like what's happening here, so I'm actually going to take it and put it in my comic too. But I try to make sure that when I do that, that I'm not like plagiarizing it in the way that like I will change the movement somehow. I'll definitely always change the angle, because I feel like if I don't change the angle, that's a little too much like laziness on my part, you know? So for example, I really loved Project A-ko, and just kind of as a, hopefully people will view it as a tribute to Project A-ko, the movie. I had taken this one part where like Biko, like, you know, punches A-ko a few times and then just takes her arm and then throws her through the wall. And I had taken that whole like punching and taking and throwing through the wall that will come up in a scene recently, but there's no wall. And then at the same time, like each movement, I think, that happened in the same angle, from the camera angle, that whole thing, but I broke it up into several different camera angles with each, like, you know, movement. So I think I'm learning a little bit more about that, and then learning how to make something, the fighting dynamic. I know that Jackie Chan movies are really great because Jackie Chan is a genius at choreographing fights, right? And so production companies would just be like, oh, you know what you're doing, so take all the fucking time you need, right? But when Jackie Chan does an American movie, you can see that like sometimes it's not as fluid because, you know, they're on a time restraint there. Yeah, and so I'm trying to tell myself that just kind of taking the Jackie Chan approach of like, just do it and keep trying it until you get it right. Until I start to get more, I guess, battle fluid, you know, then I think there's not a big problem with taking it slow, but like I feel like the big part of my work day for the comic is just like 2 or 3 hours of watching fight scenes from movies, from independent films, and just trying to figure out like, you know, and then at the same time, like to make sure that I find out which character is the good guy and which is the bad guy in each scene and stuff too, just to make sure that like, okay, in the scene. And then also, I've been trying to incorporate a lot more stuff from Filipino culture, just because I know that there's a lot of, what I've realized when I'm looking up all these fight scenes, a lot of these fight scenes are taken from Filipino martial arts, but people don't know about it. So for example, Nightwing, right? Like he has the 2 sticks. That's actually a Filipino martial art.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
and,
his baton thing.
Anything with like 2 sticks or the 1 stick and everything, that's
like Daredevil, his thing too.
Yeah, and Daredevil,
Oh,
yeah.
that's
They
Filipino.
actually had like it's called like Eskrima, Kali, and Arnis sticks, right? And they actually have somebody that's like an expert come in and teach like the actors how to do all of that and everything.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and so I think a lot of it too, they call it unarmed combat, basically. And because a stick is not really a gun, right? You're not gonna unless you throw a stick.
oh yeah. This isn't a weapon. She's unarmed now. She's carrying a stick.
Yeah. So because, you know, so since I realized a lot of that, like especially in Jason Bourne, like the Bourne Identity, like a lot of his choreograph was from Filipino martial arts as well.
Really?
Yeah, and Taken as well. And like, so after watching all of these, you know, fight scenes from these movies, I was like, wait, what am I doing, right? So then I started to go and try to look up more stuff about like Eskrima and more like stuff about Filipino martial arts. And then like a good one too was I think it was like, forgot what it's called. Is it something every frame?
Every frame of painting? Or what?
Yes, that one. And then they go into talking about fight scenes, and then they actually like have a stunt double there to explain why they did certain things in certain fight scenes. I think those videos are actually very helpful for me, like being somebody who's like not trained in martial arts, and I had absolutely no fluidity in, interpreting certain fight scenes. I just knew if they look cool or not and stuff. So right now that's my current struggle, but it's a struggle that I enjoy having right now. And it's kind of also the reason why things are taking a little bit longer, just because I want to make sure that I get it right. But I assume with time, as with anything else that I've drawn, if I get used to drawing it over and over, hopefully I can get to this level where I'm like, nope, I'm just going to draw that and it's going to look fine.
I like that. No, that's awesome. You're right. It might not be the best, but if it looks cool, whatever. And that's awesome though. You're really taking your time to really just get the craft. That's awesome. And you kind of sort of have answered my next question. I guess you're focusing on the fight scenes particularly, and just, I guess, constantly trying to up your game and perfect your craft here. So I guess ideally, all right, how about thus far with the chapters you've created, ideally when there's not, homeschooling or other things going on, how long would you say it takes you to make a chapter thus far?
So the chapters that I have is obviously done in Webtoon format, and Webtoon, unless you're a Webtoon affiliate, will only allow you to, I feel like, upload 22 to 26 images. So it's done by image, but like if you think of one image as one panel, right, then you can only do 26 panels and stuff. So with the Webtoon format, they encourage that you put a lot of white space in between each one, and it actually flows. The pacing is a lot nicer that way when you flow up, as opposed to like One Piece, where it's just like panel by panel, and then you're scrolling up slowly. Like Webtoon really encourages that someone is just scrolling up like fast, so
almost like on your phone, like an app.
Yeah, and because I think they want to, Korean webcomics have really, they're onto something with the whole, I scroll up and I'm rewarded with another really nice panel, and then I scroll up again and I'm rewarded with a really nice panel. Whereas, although this is amazing and I will always love this format, all right, there is kind of like a thing where like I'm reading it and I do get kind of exhausted a little bit about, because I see all this, that this is going to happen, and I get overwhelmed and I kind of get a little anxious starting from here, but I can kind of see at the corner of my eye that there's this here. And so I think, Korean webtoons have kind of come up with a good thing about that. The great thing is that you could upload 2 or 3 chapters at one time. Like, it doesn't matter if you have more than 26 panels. So I work panel by panel. On a good day, I could make 3 to 4 panels a day. On a bad day, I will be like,
sounds pretty good to me.
I'll make 1 panel and then I'll feel like a failure.
No. Look, if you think you can make 1 panel a day that looks good and done on a bad day, that sounds pretty good to me.
I mean, it is, but then you see, like, I'm not gonna lie, like, you'll see these really shitty ass webtoons. It's probably made by some 11-year-olds, and there's like 2 or 3 panels, but because they upload more regularly than I do, they have like way more subscribers. And like,
don't be mad at the it's quality over quantity.
They do it. They deserve it. So I'm not saying that they shouldn't have it or whatnot. But I just,
a little resentment
like there. Where I'm trying to like make it look okay, and it's taken me a little bit longer. I'm like, oh damn it, So like, I think I need to just speed it up a little bit.
Well, okay. Yeah. Well, still, it was interesting. I wanted to ask you about the format too, because I was wondering, like, was that a purposeful thing? Because I kind of liked it where it was just like, okay, you've got the image, and then okay, it's white, and it does feel like I'm building to the next. I was like,
there's a little bit more of a reward, right? From like, I scroll up, I get another reward, I scroll up, another reward. And then if you don't know what's happening, it's kind of a little bit more cinematic, where you really don't know what's going to happen. You don't see anything at the corner.
It's literally scene by scene, frame by frame. I liked it, actually. I thought, okay, so that's more of a formatting thing. That's cool.
Yeah, it's a very much a Korean / Chinese webtoon type of thing. And I think Japan is starting to catch on to it, but they're still kind of in this format. But this format is forever beautiful, so I'm not going to complain that they keep it this way or whatever. But I've noticed that for me and for the time that I have, and especially the I guess, what do you call it? The age bracket that I'm targeting for, they're more into kind of the webtoon format right now. And so I'm like, okay, well, you know, they do say that if you want to make it into like a paperback thing, what you need to do is just keep the webtoon panels that you make on a separate layer, like keep your speech bubbles and your art on a separate layer. So that when you do want to make it into kind of a paperback thing, all you need to do is just put in the art and then reformat the art, and then you can put the speech bubbles wherever you want. And it will still be the same sort of art. So it's actually harder to do it from webtoon format to this format, like regular comic book format. But it's easier to go from comic book format and then slicing each panel out and then putting it on webtoon. It's easier that way than the other way around.
Is that something you're thinking about eventually doing? If you get enough traction that you're going to release some, I guess, physical copies eventually? Is that something you're hoping to do?
I've had some people ask for it. The only thing that I have is a physical copy out right now, and it's not really of the comic, but it's like it's a ashcan about my comic, about kind of how, you know, the comic started out, and it's got
nice
some art like of the past versions of it that never actually made it online.
Ooh, okay. Some behind the scenes extras material.
Yeah, and then I would write about like exactly, you know, the process that I went through with those, like where I tried to do it traditionally and whatnot. And so like I have, and then here's that fight that I told you about where it's just went, you know, like this was all done traditionally. That was the only thing. Yeah.
Looks cool though. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, so even the words too were done traditionally. So like, and then there's like some stuff from Inktober when I was still, this was done in like 2017, and I was still trying to like develop, you know, how the characters would look and things. But yeah, and then I would talk about like how the characters have changed from the past versions and stuff. Like, so there's that character, her name is Raphael, and then that's how she looks now. And then before, like Eli didn't have glasses, but now he has glasses. So like this is the only thing like physical copy that I have for this. And then also like I included an upcoming character which hasn't come in, and I've named him Cameron Davis, and he's based off a little boy that I used to babysit all the time.
Well,
so, I'm really excited for when he starts appearing in the comics. So this is the only thing that I got out right now, like as a copy. And I printed this out by myself, like, and I have a Nashcan stapler, and I just stapled it there. So
cool.
Yeah, but someday, I don't know.
Awesome. Well, let me see. I think that was generally what I was thinking about asking you with your comic. Could you do? I'm going to post links and stuff. You said you have a Patreon. So how does it work with your tier system? What are some benefits of people?
So I do have. I only have 2 tiers right now. I have like the $1 tier, which is like if you want to have a shout out at the end of every chapter that I do, then I'll include it, and your name at the end, basically. And then I have a $5 tier where it's like, I'm just going to say that every illustration that I ever make, I just give you the full res for it digitally. So I only have currently those 2 tiers. If I do actually make anything into print, I'll probably add that 3rd tier or something.
Nice.
Concerning the comic. But for right now, like, it's advertised as like you'll get any illustration I make about half of the crown for full res, but really I just throw in any other illustrations I've ever done, like any fan art that I've done of another series or something. Like I just throw that in too. So
cool.
It's kind of
that's cool.
Hopefully that makes it worth it for people. I probably have to update it recently. With the whole move to the new house and everything, and with the schooling, I haven't had like a chance, but I think what I'm thinking of doing is probably taking the full res of the panels and just uploading those for the Patreon, like so people can see that.
That sounds cool. No.
Or I know some people too also like upload the full like PSD with the layers intact, and then they give that as a tier, for people who want to see like the process that they use to make that and things. But I'm not sure if that just also encourages more theft.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, do you really want to give all of your like basic like stuff out to people? But you've already got it up officially somewhere. That is an interesting question.
Yeah. So I'm not worried about Americans stealing it, to be honest. I'm very worried about plagiarism in like China or something. But the only thing that I could do to protect myself from that is probably hire a translator to translate it to Chinese and put that out first, and then I'll do it.
That's cool. Make sure it's out there.
Yeah, there. And then, because there are really no copyright laws for that sort of thing in China. Like it's not, and in the Philippines, like it's not really in terms of art. There's still nothing there in place yet.
Have you heard about Chinese Star Wars?
No, I haven't.
Yeah,
I'll look it up.
Like only reason I know what you're talking about is because there was a whole like comic that somebody in China made in the 70s because they didn't have access to the movie, and they just got like some basic information and made a whole comic or something based off of general ideas. It's nothing like actual Star Wars. So yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, well, I think over there they have a different view of it. Like they don't view it as plagiarism or whatever. It's kind of a culture thing. And then it's kind of the same deal in the Philippines. So, for example, like IP, intellectual property stuff, is a problem even in the Philippines too. Like if I go through a Philippine manufacturer and have them like make something for me for my product, say for example half of the crown, they could take that and then sell it on their own. They can make their own copies and sell it on their own and rename the characters and do whatever they want. And if I come to them and say, hey, I didn't want you to do that, I didn't agree with that, like there will be some people there that are like, but this is my business, and so why do you have a problem with that? Like this is how I make money. Like how else am I going to make money? Like what is your problem? I already gave you your product. Like, so this is me selling my products. Like they don't understand the IP thing yet for a lot of people. Not a lot of people, but there are some people who don't. So it's interesting that I say that because that's with like the manufacturing side. However, like comic art in the Philippines is as old as it is in the States, I think. And so you have a lot of people that are drawing for Marvel and things in the Philippines because it's cheaper to hire the Filipino artist than the American artist. And so I think like that artist and that culture, like they get it, but there's still people that are like, they still view it as, and I guess this is true for America too, because there's been like a huge uptick of like a lot of people who are like, Artist Alley, that makes a lot of money, I'm gonna do that, right? Where they think, oh, this is a get rich quick scheme, so I'm gonna learn how to draw two shits and I'm gonna make a lot of money. So there's still a lot of people, I think, in the online artist community all over the world that are still kind of, they don't get that, oh, there is something such as artistic plagiarism. So
big time. Yeah, big time there is. Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Something I'm saying, something is haven't caught on culture. Like, oh yeah, no, that's fine. I can just draw this thing looks like this and not give him credit. What are you talking about? It's just making some money.
Yeah, I think there's not really a worldwide etiquette yet. So
that's interesting.
Yeah. And then also there are some people too who believe like tracing is pretty okay. And then there are people who don't understand that like not tracing itself isn't terrible because that's basically like the job of an inker, right?
Yeah.
And let's say there are some manga, especially like Gantz completely does all of their characters using 3D models.
Really?
Yes. So what they do is they position the 3D models and how they want them to be drawn, and then they just trace over it.
Huh.
And at the end of like I think at the end of every chapter, sometimes they'll like go over about like how they made the scene and everything, and they'll say like, oh look, we did this. And that's why Gantz is so detailed, is because like they cut a lot of time with trying to think of like, how is this going to look in this environment, but just actually putting them in the 3D environments and doing that. So Korean comics actually have realized, oh, that fucking works. So they've been doing that a lot too. And I have done that with my own like 3D models, where if I'm trying to figure out like a certain scene, especially like in the photos that I took with the photo backgrounds, and then I would like paint over the background, and then I'm like, but I wasn't allowed to like have a person in the photo when I took these photos, because I was told by the city, because I had permission to use the photos for my comic, but I was told by the city that if I had anyone in my photos, then I would have to have them sign like release forms. And I didn't want to go through that. So I didn't have like people in my photos. When I would like take pictures of the photos for my backgrounds I would put in my comic, I didn't know what a person would look like in that photo, like how tall they would be or how much space they would take up. So for those cases, I did put in like 3D models just to get an idea of like, oh, a person would be like this tall, like, if I put them in there. So
that's useful, actually.
Yeah, and so that's been like, in that case, tracing is totally okay, because you're really just, you're not tracing like a character, you're just tracing kind of a guide of like, oh yeah, it's supposed to be this tall, Yeah. And so it's weird because you say that is okay, and then a lot of newbie artists are just kind of like, if that's okay, I could take this art and just trace the whole thing. It's the same thing, right? So
no, not quite.
Yeah, and so it's hard to explain that to people. It's just kind of like, no, like, if you really don't want to learn how to draw people, fine, but at least get your own 3D model and pose it how you want to or something. But then they don't even want to do that. Like, there are free apps out there. I know that a lot of people are using something called Easy Poser, or Easy Pose. And I see a lot of newbie digital artists using that, and that seems to work out, So I mean, like, just find whatever you need. I utilize the ones in Clip Studio for those scenes, but I found though, when it's a fight scene, that I do a lot better in the fight scenes without those models. So that's good.
I guess
that
yeah.
part actually makes you feel okay.
Kind of cool, getting some positioning, like how would you look like if you're going to fight for this? That might be a lot more involved in those situations, actually.
Yeah, especially too with the fight scenes, there's a little bit more foreshortening in some cases, and if you do use a 3D model, a lot of that foreshortening is lost. So I suppose you could take the 3D model, close them in, and then like make each limb or like layer of limbs like on a different layer, and then like kind of emphasize it that way. But to me, that just seems like just another step, and so I just
it's like it's enough work as is. Oh man.
Yeah, pretty much.
Gotcha. I can't believe it was such an obvious question. I guess we'll end that particular conversation with I guess for just with your experience as an artist, and I guess for anybody that wants to get into creating comics, where do you think a good place is to start? I guess online or wherever, just from your experience.
I think if you want to do the webtoon format, like just read as much webtoons as you can, and you'll actually there was somebody who came out recently with they did their whole like thesis, I think senior thesis about comic reading fluency, and that American comic fluency, it takes a lot more time to learn how to do in comparison with Japanese comic fluency. And what they mean by that is that if a little kid reads an American comic, you need to know the story in order to interpret movements in between each panel, right? And so you need to learn how to read and that kind of thing. And Japanese comic fluency, like you don't actually need the words to understand what is happening from panel to panel.
Interesting.
In the same breath, I believe webtoon fluent well. So but I think it takes even less time than it does for manga fluency. So if you're thinking of doing like just manga comics, like learn that fluency. And the easiest one out of all three of those would be the webtoon one. But again, it's kind of what you're going for. A lot of people still want to go for this format. And what you can do is just do this format and then slice each like panel out and put it in a webtoon format. That would be like easier, because that way you can have readers, you know, just have, if you post it in as many places as you can, unless you're trying to go towards being a webtoon affiliate, which I am not trying to do. Just try to think of what you want. Like, do you want to make money with this? If you do, then try to think of a schedule and try to learn the fluency. And then also, like, if you just see what everybody else is doing and then kind of what's popular now. For manga, the most popular manga right now is the Kimetsu no Yaiba, right? And then so if you want to learn, I guess, how the current trend of manga fluency is there, that would be a good one to pick up. And then if you're thinking of webtoon fluency, I'd say it depends what genre that you want. Like if you want to go for like a romance genre, right now I think what's really popular is the two webtoons, I Love You, which is YOO, one of the characters' names is you. And then another one is, I think, Beauty. Forgot what it's called. Real Beauty. It's called. It's about a girl who's like supposedly ugly that puts on a lot of makeup and gets really, really pretty. And then for the action ones that are really that you want to learn about, there are some comics on there that's kind of done in a more Marvel-esque way. For example, the rapper Common has his own webtoon.
What?
I'm not even kidding.
Wow.
He has his own webtoon on there, and
Nice.
it's kind of done in like in a Marvel superhero format. And then another one that's like a Korean webtoon is it's called Unordinary, and that one's pretty good too. There's a lot of action in it. And for webtoon affiliates, you'll have like for those series anyway. The limit is like 100 panels per chapter. Wow. For those affiliates. Yeah. So there's a lot of scrolling and stuff. And so then I come in with like, here's my 40 panels.
Hey.
Like a month.
Nice. Hey, but you build it up. It's some really good stuff, you know. Remember, quality over quantity. There you go. Hey, be proud of what you produce, though. That you're being somewhat consistent, right? You got things going on, you know. It's a passion.
I do. So I do have comfort in the fact that I'm not actually sitting there and wasting my time. I will be transparent and say that, you know, when we were supposed to do this like a week ago, I did have like a week or two where I was still kind of had to deal with some family emergency stuff that we discussed there.
I know.
But that only happens like once in a blue moon type of thing. So normally I take comfort in the fact that I don't actually sit there and I'm not actually slacking off and like not thinking about it and like, you know, just putting it off like more of like I every moment that I'm not doing it, like there'll be something in the back of my mind that will be itching to be like, go do this, you know, like it's waiting for you. I feel like it's like this infant that I've neglected when I'm not tending to the infant. And,
gotta nourish.
Yeah, when you have an infant, right? It's always like, you're always holding the baby and it's always with you and stuff. And so it's kind of, I feel like the comic is kind of similar to that, like in my mind, is that it's just always there. Like I will be, you know, going to sleep and the last thing I'll think about is the comic. The first thing I'll wake up in the morning is the comic. I'll be like, did it eat yet? You know, like.
Did you feed it with your mind, with your creativity? Did you give it what it needed?
Yeah, like I just think about like, oh, there's still this one plot hole, and then I'll have to like, you know, I'll just be in bed and like scrolling up about like, how can I fill that up or like make that better, or, you know, something. Yeah.
Oh. Well, no, it's cool. I think it's really awesome what you've created thus far. I didn't realize you were as far along with it as you were. So I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm definitely going to promote that. We have been going on for a little while. How much time do you have?
We can wrap it up in about a few minutes if that's okay with you.
All right, that's fine. Well, then I will just Okay, then we can go through these pretty quickly then, but I wanted to just follow up with some little things.
Okay.
First of all, Final Fantasy 15. I actually didn't play it. Okay, I didn't play it. Yeah, we're catching up from a couple years ago. Okay, I didn't play it actually, but my girlfriend got it like right around the time we started seeing each other, and I remember you recommended that movie to tie things in, like to watch that first, and I
Yeah.
thought that it was the most confusing like thing. I didn't find it helpful at all, to be completely honest.
So here's the thing about 15. There's a lot of concepts. Okay. There's a lot of concepts. Okay. In Japan, usually they're very on the nose about like, this is this and this is what's happening.
I
and
know.
what I mean by that is that usually there's like two characters fucking fighting in the background, and then there's somebody like thinking about them fighting and explaining to the viewer of like, he's using his Shining gun, or
Yes.
something like that, just
Yes.
explaining it to the viewer. In Final Fantasy 15, throughout, even if you've seen all of the anime episodes, you've seen the movie that is supposed to be a prequel to the movie, right, and everything else, even if you've seen all of that, they're not on the nose about everything. They actually don't explain to you exactly what this and that is. So I watched all of that, and we played like throughout the entire game, and I still had to have a friend explain to me what the fuck was happening sometimes. So the whole time I was very confused. I'm like, wait a minute. So the king has this ring that is like distributing power to all these fucking soldiers, right? And the king dies, and then nobody has those powers anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But then here's like fucking Prompto and everything, and they still have the powers. Like, doesn't make sense, right? Is what I was thinking. And apparently it's because like Prompto and Gladiolus and what's the other one?
I forget. I know
Ignis, like all three
yeah.
of them, they get their power from Noctis because he's royal blood.
Okay.
So it's only people from royal blood that can distribute that power.
Okay. All right. Well, here's the thing.
So,
I'm there's a couple of the Final Fantasies I haven't played through. I'm trying to go through this thing where I'm playing a bunch of classics. I got a big list of things I either want to replay or play for the first time.
yeah.
And I only know two people really that played it through, my girlfriend and this other person I know, and they both told me that they did not like the way the game ended, and they really didn't like it. Did you? Nobody has told me like, oh yeah, definitely go play it because it's got a dark
throughout
ending.
the entire game. It's a war. There's a war that's happening, right?
Yeah.
They're constantly going through war. So literally, and in every war, it's all just a bunch of despair and sadness. Right?
Yeah. Yep. Fine.
So 15 is that game of
Okay.
like
I don't
what
mind.
are things that can happen during the despair and sadness.
I don't know. I don't mind a game that's dark, so maybe that's what it is. But I just know people they were kind of unsatisfied with that. But you still think it's worth playing, right? For sure.
I do. I think it's worth playing because the experience that you have with the other three characters, I think it's worth it. It's very much worth it. The great part is, I don't know if you were playing it in Japanese or English.
And we have it in English, I think.
Okay, keep it in English because Prompto's voice in Japanese is so annoying.
Oh no. Okay.
But and the translations might not be. There's like a different effect that they have, but I almost want to say the English translations are better than the original Japanese. And not because none of the story or message is altered, but I think the characters were honored more that way. It was very clear that 15 was a very rushed game. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure that when they came out in Japanese, that like, I feel like the voice acting was very rushed for the Japanese, and in English, I think they actually took their time, with recording it all. And that's what it appears to be. I think, have you played Final Fantasy VII Remake?
We're actually playing that right now. I've been enjoying that so far.
Okay, so you will clearly see that 15 was just a test game for Final Fantasy.
With the combat, with the Kingdom Hearts combat, because I was thinking, I I remember her doing the tutorial, and I'm like, we've been playing through it, and I'm like, this is 15's combat, like very similar. Very
Yeah,
similar.
yeah, it's very, and obviously, like, I feel like, yeah, it's weird because 15 itself, like, the story was really great, but I think people who were working on the game mechanics for it were just really using it as a testing ground, which is why the game is so buggy, is because they were just trying to test, how things would work for this one story that I think,
7.
yeah, that obviously, like, it's for
Oh,
seven remake is good because it feels like that the people who were working on the mechanics were also in close communication with people working on the story, which for 15 I feel like it was given to 2 different teams and they were just kind of talking every now and then. That's what it felt like, right? Maybe that's not what happened, but that's just, and then plus coming from me, I know nothing about developing games, so it's easier said than done, of course, but
sure.
I don't 15 game was like 15 was so sloppy, but it's so popular for a reason, like
Okay.
despite the sloppiness.
Okay.
So that's what makes it worth it, is because you never hear that. If a game is that buggy and that sloppy, most people would be like, man, fuck this game.
True.
But it still has, the fan base that it does for a reason. I'm just going to say that.
Okay,
So.
good. All right, that's your mini review for that. I'll keep that in mind. Also, I remember in one of our last podcasts we had together, did you ever finish Jessica Jones?
I did.
Okay. Well, how did you feel about the resolution of that fucking show? Because I didn't like it. I didn't like it.
I mean, Jessica Jones is pretty much like a continuous like frustration when you watch it, right? But
Yeah.
that's her character. Her character is just very frustrating.
All right.
So
Shot. Okay. Shot. All right. I get that it's frustrating. That's fine. She developed, I guess, but we didn't like it because every character got worse. It felt like throughout the show, they all got worse, and I hated that. You know what I mean? I hated that.
Yeah. And I wonder why that was. I feel like Marvel around the time that Jessica Jones was big, well, even now, like they kind of all started to go into this depressive, like, and I wonder how much of an influence from the Walking Dead comic influence all of that kind of that whole like there's so much despair but I'm gonna keep reading, so like I wonder if that kind of culture translated into the show.
Maybe.
I don't know, I'm trying to come up with excuses for why they went there, but
Did you like the villain of the 3rd season, the serial killer guy, the evil fanboy guy? He was interesting, I guess. No?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. I feel like Kilgrave, nobody was better than him.
Yeah, you were a big fan of Purple Man. I remember you were like, oh yeah, he's so great. he's great.
At the same time, like I think it's one of those situations where they shouldn't have started out with a bang, and David Tennant is pretty much a bang, right?
Yeah.
They should have saved him for the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's my 2 cents on that. Like,
all right. All right, that's fair. Okay, want to get your 2 cents on that? Okay, and before you go, I'm going to put you on the spot because I'm talking a lot about my favorite movies. You don't have to give me an order, but can you tell me your top 10 favorite movies?
Top 10? Oh my gosh, 10.
Can I give you a 10?
10. All right. Number 1 has to absolutely be Kaguya Hime by Ghibli.
Okay.
That one I've only seen once, but I can't bear to even watch it a second time right now because, like, look, I'm already like tearing up. It's so much that like I didn't understand that a movie could be that crazy, and then it's still something that I think, oh man. And then number 2, I would say, sorry, I'm starting from number 1 and then number 2.
Oh, that's fine.
Instead of counting backwards like I should. But like number 2, I would say, which is the one that's about universal grammar, or there's the woman, the linguist that can. I want to say Contact. Was it Contact?
Oh, with Jodie Foster?
Oh no, maybe not Contact.
Universal grammar.
Maybe it's called with an I.
Are you talking about? Wait, are you talking about
It's a woman who like
Arrival? The Arrival?
Arrival.
The Arrival? That I love that movie.
Sorry, I'm terrible with names. This is why this is gonna be a
With
terrible
with,
list.
with the squid aliens with the ink and the art.
Yeah. I think that one's a great one. That one I could probably watch like all the time.
Good choice.
Number 3, I would have to say Independence Day.
Yes. We will not go quietly into the night.
That one is one that I can watch like all the time as well.
Classic. All right.
And then number 4, I would have to say Bed Knobs and Broomsticks.
Ooh.
Yeah, I really like that one. I show that to my kids, and the kids like that one too. Number 5, Little Nemo in Slumberland.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I love that movie. It's on Crunchyroll, actually.
My first anime experience.
Yeah, I really love that one. And then that was number 5, right? So I have 5 more to go.
Yep.
Oh, gosh.
Crunch time. What doesn't get bumped off?
Gosh. Oh, okay, fine. Number 6 has to be Fatal Fury 2. All right, is it? Yeah, Fatal Fury, the one where he's like with Sulia. That one. I'm sorry, but
it's your list that can be varied. Whatever, I don't care.
And then number 7, I would have to say, gosh, I really liked Vampire D Hunter, Bloodlust.
Oh, okay, nice.
And then I got 3 more. So number 8. What was number 8? Crap. Was it called Wizard? The one where they were playing Super Mario World 3?
Oh, the wizard.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Really? Nice.
I used to watch that movie all the time.
Nice.
And then so now I have 2 more. Number 9. Forgot the name of the movie because I'm terrible with names, but I watched the movie probably 10,000 times. It was Johnny Five is Alive.
Short Circuit.
Yeah!
Johnny Five. That's one of Hero's favorites too. It's alive.
Short Circuit.
Your mother was a snowblower. Yep. Nice.
Boy, the 10th movie, my 10th.
The last one.
Oh my god. Okay. You know what? It's a recent movie that I've seen recently, but I love it to shits. It's called Omae wa Umaso.
Okay, I don't know that one.
It's a kid movie.
Okay.
But it's about a T-Rex being raised by a plant eater dinosaur.
Uh-huh.
And he doesn't find out he's a T-Rex until later. And when he finds out that he's a T-Rex, he abandons his plant eater family and lives out his T-Rex life. And then he tries to eat this baby ankylosaurus, or is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm,
and then the baby mistakes him for a dad, and he doesn't correct the baby.
That's adorable.
And so he raises the baby.
That's adorable.
Yeah. So it's an anime though.
Yeah, I was going to say it sounds like an anime. I'll have to check it out. That sounds.
So yeah, it's called Omae wa Umaso, which means you are. It means your name is Umaso, and Umaso means like you look good, as in you look good to eat, right?
Oh, your name is.
Yeah, and so because that's what happens when the T-Rex sees the baby, he says, "Omae Umaso da na," like I'm gonna eat you. And then the baby's like, "Oh, is that my name? Hi, Dad!" And so I really love that movie.
That's cool.
Like ever since we found it on YouTube, like that's all we watch. Like the kids will ask to watch it all the time. It's really good.
Nice. That's good. You came up with that top 10 pretty quickly, so that's good. That's good on the fly. No, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Well, hey, once again, thank you for being on the podcast. I've kind of been saying with this people, like, we'll try to do it again, hopefully less than 2 or 3 years. uh, you know, well, maybe we'll try to get you on the Phantom group or something if you have the time. We'll try to make it happen.
Yeah, definitely. Hope things are a little bit better now. We've kind of almost unpacked all the boxes, so I think we'll have a lot more time now. So
Good.
thank you so much for giving me this time and letting me talk your ear off.
Oh, no, it's good. Great time. We'll hope to have you back sometime. All right. Everybody, stay magical.